Hi, this is Mike Fauché, and having been recently evacuated as a result of the forest fires here in Southern California, I wanted to do a short video on lessons learned. Hope you enjoy the video, and as always, don't forget to subscribe and set that notification icon so you'll be notified when new content becomes available. First of all, let me clarify that this video is about disaster readiness as it pertains to our data, not everything else that needs to be done in order to always be prepared for natural emergencies or emergencies of any kind. Just to set the stage, in October 2019, I was part of the evacuation here in Southern California as a result of the wildfires. We were woken up at about 1:30 in the morning and smelled smoke, and when I looked in the backyard, the hills behind me, about a block and a half, were up in flames. We were given the notification for mandatory evacuation, so we had only a little bit of time to prepare and get our stuff and get out the door. And today I want to share with you kind of what worked and what didn't work and what I need to change or have changed so that should anything happen again in the future, I'm going to be a little bit more ready. So the first thing that I want to share with you, and something that kind of worked out for me, and it's probably, I'd like to say it was completely planned for, but it wasn't. For years I've been staying away from paper. Most of my documents, everything I own pretty much is digital, probably like many of you. So that really worked out in my advantage because I didn't have to scramble for a lot of papers. Most of my important paperwork fits in, a couple of legal size envelopes. So there wasn't a lot of paperwork to carry, just things like passports and social security cards and things like that. So I didn't really have a lot of documents that I needed to bring with me. So that really, truly helped out. So I guess the first takeaway from this is that you should always have everything in digital form when you can. And this, again, is coming from my own opinions. But not having to deal with the paperwork and finding it. And of course, if something happens to that paperwork, not having to rely on it is critically important to me. So having your data in digital form should be one of your priorities, which obviously will bring up some other challenges like how do we protect our digital data, which we'll get into a little bit later here in this video. So one of the key takeaways I got from this is that when we were told to pack up and leave, the very first thing I grabbed and put in the car was my NAS unit. My digital storage arrangement has basically put everything into one unit, with the other NAS units and computers and stuff serving as replication or backup. So grabbing the one NAS unit, putting it in the car, was paramount for me to get everything I have and take it with me. Whether it was, critical or not, it came with me. The other thing that really became important was that typically, because I do some traveling, typically I have a backpack ready that's full of cables and chargers, batteries, things like that. And that became important because I grabbed that immediately and put that in the car along with the NAS unit. And having my laptop there, usually packed up and ready to go, was also critical. So I grabbed all three of those, put them in my car, and from a data point of view, I had pretty much everything I needed. So the rest was to focus on, getting the other things I needed because I didn't know exactly how long I would be gone, and God forbid, I didn't know if I was actually going to get to come back. So we didn't really truly understand how this fire was going to actually, how large it was going to be and how many homes and properties it would consume in the process. So overall, the takeaway is that always have your data in a way that you can take it, and all the peripherals and equipment that you're going to need to be able to access it should you need information that's on there, whether it's insurance or anything else. We'll talk about cloud storage here in a minute too, but that was really the key takeaway for me. One of the things that really did not work out for me, and something that was a valuable lesson to learn, was on the topic of UPS units. Just before we were told to evacuate, we had some power fluctuations. And I naturally assumed that those power fluctuations wouldn't impact me much since everything I have here is on UPS units. However, what I realized, or what I found out later, was that my security cameras, which are driven from a computer, that particular UPS had a defective or a worn out battery, and it didn't hold the charge. So the whole system went down without me knowing about it. Now, normally, for something like this, it wouldn't be that critical. However, if you follow these fires at all, or any natural disaster, at least I can't speak for the rest of the country, but here in Southern California, the media does a terrible job at keeping you informed about local situations. They're focusing on, somebody's house getting burned up, or showing the same airdrops over and over again. And they don't really talk to you about what's happening in your particular neighborhood. So for me, I was relying totally on my security cameras to give me that external view, since I can get a 360-degree view of the outside of my house from my cameras. So after we evacuated and I got to the destination, the first thing I wanted to do was to check on the status of things, and my cameras were dead. So the moral of the story is that one of the biggest lessons I learned that I need to change, and have changed, is that you need to make sure that your UPSs are functional. So testing them, making sure that they hold the charge, the amount of charge that you need to hold, is important. And if you need to add them, if you need to change batteries, if you need to, maybe get a larger one to provide the power that you need, or the sustainability that you need, then you should do that. And put them on a schedule, get them checked to make sure that they're powering up for the duration that you would like them to. Because it was extremely frustrating for me to not find out any information from my local media source, and not be able to check on the house, and see everything around me, see if the neighbors are okay, see if anything, was happening. So the other takeaway I had was, when you have things on UPSs, we typically attach them to NAS units or computers or things like that. But one of the things you got to make sure is that you've got a UPS on your switches. So things that drive things need to be powered too. Otherwise, you're going to have a UPS on a computer, which will protect it from crashing. However, it may not allow you to access it because you've got some $20 switch somewhere that's not powered up on a UPS. So go down the entire chain and test out what you have. Make sure that when the power goes out, that you're able to access the critical things that you need to, whether it be your NAS unit, your security computer, whatever it is that you need to access. Make sure you can get to it and it's powered. The other thing that we tend to forget is a lot of these cameras, all of these cameras are powered from either a PoE or direct power, and they need to be on a UPS, or the PoE switch needs to be on a UPS, so that can keep running. Because if you can't power that up, then again, the security cameras are useless. The one saving grace, or the one salvation I had that really impressed me and worked really well, was the Blink cameras. Since they're battery operated and with tremendous battery life, that was the only thing that was really a salvation for me, because I could actually see that, and that was the only view that I had, and it's very limited since it's really only covering my porch. It was very limited to what my view was, but at least I could see part of the street and kind of get a feel for what's happening. So it was the only comfort I had when I couldn't get to anything else, and was not getting any information whatsoever from our media service. So the second takeaway, or another takeaway I should say, is that take and use multiple technologies. Don't rely on just one thing. Mix it up. If you got PoE cameras, throw in a couple of battery operated cameras like the Blinks or anything else. And diversify a little bit. So if one system fails or you can't get to it, you've got the other as a backup. So that was a critical takeaway for me. So before we get into my backup strategy, which I think, everybody has to find their own way of doing things, but I'm going to show you what I do, and I believe it worked well for me. I think I'm going to expand on it just because I think, I was lucky this time. I was able to carry the NAS unit out. Maybe next time I won't be so lucky. So hopefully there is not a next time, but the whole purpose of disaster readiness is to be prepared for anything. And of course, being able to get to your data is one of those critical things, especially in today's society. So we're going to talk a little bit here about my backup plan. But in summary, having data diversification, make sure you have your data in multiple places, is extremely critical, because if you're not able to have time to get your stuff out, you need to be able to access it a different way. The other thing is, as I mentioned earlier, is get your UPSs tested. Make sure that you've got your entire network covered that you need, and that you can power the things that you need. On a future video, I'll be talking about the ability to remote start your computer or any system in the event of a power outage once the power gets returned. So we'll talk about that here on a future video, because I think I've come up with a solution that works really well, and I'll share it with you. So the other takeaways are, make sure that you have diversification in any of your security systems or other systems, and anything that you have running on UPSs, make sure you test them. Make sure their batteries are replaced. Make sure they're up to snuff all the time. It will save you a lot of grief that I was subject to anyway. So on the topic of data protection, I want to talk a little bit about backup. I want to share with you my backup strategy so you get an idea of what I do. And, you can obviously modify it and do what you think it works for you. I'm just going to share with you what I do and encourage you to have some type of strategy, whatever it is, whatever works for you, whatever falls into your budget. Just do something, because you never know when you're going to need it. Anyway, let's get into the backup strategy, and I hope that you found this video a little bit useful. If nothing else, get you thinking about what you can do to be a little bit better ready. Let's go over my backup strategy. First off, the epicenter of all my data is the TVS 951. That's my 9-bay NAS unit. That's where I basically aggregate all the data around the house into that particular NAS, with the exception of things like Plex movies and things like that, things that are just more or less disposable. But all other data ends up on this particular NAS. Now, my first step is to actually back up this to the 453 that you see listed there, and that's the unit that's directly next to it. So it's pretty much, in terms of raw hard drive storage, is basically configured the same way. So everything that's going to go from the 951 over to the TS453, and that replication runs daily. So I'm basically doing a one-way sync from the 951 to the 453. Now, in addition to that, the second phase, or the second layer of protection for me, is to run a Veracrypt volume on my VM/Plex server, which basically takes the data from the NAS and copies it to various folders on that server. That's actually a pull system, so it's really pulling data from the NAS onto the server. And the third stage for this is actually going to the Amazon 3. So again, using hybrid backup, I'm actually syncing data that's on the 951 up to Amazon S3, and I do that on a weekly basis. Since the little brush with disaster, I'm going to increase the amount of things that go up to S3. I was fairly conservative before, looking at just totally critical data, but now I'm expanding that to everything, including photos and everything else that I don't want to lose or will need to get access to, should I not be able to take the NAS or be able to power up the NAS for some reason. So I need to have more data available at my fingertips. So I'm going to expand the use of that. Now, you can use other services if you want, or in addition to, if you don't want to pay for Amazon S3. But I highly recommend you do something and get some stuff out there on the cloud that you can get to if you got to pull away from your home. That basically completes the process for me. It gives me basically 2 additional copies, resident plus 1 copy out to the cloud of anything that it's deemed important. So hope that helps. Again, helps you get your start thinking about your backup strategy and your disaster recovery should anything go wrong. So before I end this video, I'd like to once again say a special thanks to the LA Fire Department and LA Police Department for the outstanding job they did. And my heart goes out to the people that are still impacted. As of 10/31, there are people that are about 8 to 10 miles away from where I am that are presently undergoing massive evacuations with a separate forest fire. And I kind of understand what they're going through. So I certainly wish them the best. For me, it really turned out as good as I could ever hope for. There was no damage to the house, only ashes everywhere that needed to be cleaned out. So nothing a little blood, sweat, and tears for a few days didn't take care of. So I feel very fortunate. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the video and don't forget to set those notifications. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.